already been told that. Okay. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitanjena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Gurubhishta Shapurukam Guru Ganer Shisha Sambhushitam Chincha Samasta Veda Nipanam Shri Rupa Pantanugam Govinda Viramujvalam Bharatanam Bhaktam Vitam Sundaram Vande Vishwa Guruncha Divya Bhagavat Premnohi Vichar. So we're continuing this morning with Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. We are in Madhya Lila chapter 19, Mahaprabhu's instructions to Srila Rupa Goswami. And we've just reached that section after hearing some description of the surrounding happenings. Mahaprabhu has visited Vallabhacharya, had a very wonderful meeting with Raghupati Upadhyay. And now Mahaprabhu is going to begin his instruction to Srila Rupa Goswami. So due to the great crowds in Prayag, Mahaprabhu went to a place called the Shashvamedha Ghat. It was there that the Lord instructed Sri Rupa Goswami and empowered him in the philosophy of devotional service. Krishna Tattva, Bhakti Tattva, Rasa Tattva, Pranta, Sab Shri Kaila Prabhu Bhagavat Siddhanta. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught Srila Rupa Goswami the ultimate limit of the truth about Lord Krishna, the truth about devotional service, and the truth about transcendental mellows, culminating in conjugal love between Radha and Krishna. Finally, he told Rupa Goswami about the ultimate conclusions of Srimad Bhagavatam. Ramananda Pashe Jata Siddhanta Shunila Rupe Kripa Korita Sab Sancharila. Mahaprabhu taught Rupa Goswami all the conclusions he had heard from Ramananda Rai and duly empowered him so that he could understand them. Shirupa Hridoye Prabhu Shakti Sancharila. This is an interesting point. That not only did he tell him, but he empowered him to understand. This is something mentioned a few times. Also, when Mahaprabhu finishes his instructions to Sanatan Goswami, then Sanatan requests Mahaprabhu, can you bless me so I can understand everything that you've said? Which, according to our material, calculation of things, that would be what's the word I'm looking for? Completely unnecessary, essentially. That someone's already deliberately told you something, you've heard it, your mind has held it, so then that's the end of the transaction, right? But the devotees, they are always feeling so much dependent. And it is really the truth that you can be told many things, you can hear many things, but you cannot really take it to heart and understand it unless you receive the blessings to do so. So this is also mentioned about Rupa Goswami. Shirupa Hridoye Prabhu Shakti Sancharila Sarvatattva Nirupane Pravina Korila. By entering the heart of Rupa Goswami, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu empowered him to ascertain properly the conclusions of all truths. He made him an experienced devotee whose decisions correctly agreed with the verdicts of the disciplic succession. Thus, Sri Rupa Goswami was personally empowered by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Shivananda Senar Putra. In fact, we can say that principle is so essential that one can simply receive the blessing to understand without having been told. The will is the goodwill is the most important thing. Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he made that point about Srinivasacharya, that Srinivas, he had received Mahaprabhu's order to hear Bhagavatam, to learn Bhagavatam from Gadadhar Pandit. And Gadadhar Pandit also received instruction from Mahaprabhu to instruct Srinivasacharya. However, he was never physically able to do so. Because he had no book, then Srinivas had to go get another book. And then by the time he came back with a book, Gadadhar Pandit had left the world. And so Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he made that point that revelation is dependent on the Lord's will. That transmission, it is a subtle transmission. And so, sorry, I jumped ahead. So Srinivasacharya, he didn't receive that direct instruction, but he'd received the blessing to receive instruction from Gadadhar. And so then later, when Srinivas went to read Bhagavatam, Srila Sridhar Maharaj said all the meanings came rushing to him. Everything came rushing to him. And he became renowned as the most extraordinary Bhagavatam speaker. He gave the most wonderful explanations about Bhagavatam. So he didn't have the direct, transmission, direct exchange, but it was all, heart transmission, conscious will in the background. It's very encouraging, It's very encouraging. If you think also about Narottam Thakur, this is something I think about sometimes. Narottam Thakur, he gave us the song, Sriyukta Manjari Pada, right? Where he's expressing the most intense aspiration and affinity for the connection of Sri Rupa. But Narottam never met Rupa Goswami. Narottam came a generation after. So he never met Rupa Goswami. How did that happen? How is it he's able to express such an intense hankering, intense desire and appreciation for Sri Rupa? Because of, a conscious, subtle transmission taking place. So it is a very interesting point. And very encouraging, very hopeful for us. Even Shri Guru may not be physically with us, but his blessing can come in the subtle sphere. Pray for that. By entering the heart of Rupa Goswami, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu empowered him to ascertain properly the conclusions of all truths. He made him an experienced devotee whose decisions correctly agreed with the verdicts of the disciplic succession. Thus, Sri Rupa Goswami was personally empowered by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Shivananda Senar Putra Kavi Karnapur Rupe Milan Swagrante Likiachen Bachur. In his book, Chaitanya Chandrodaya, Kavi Karnapur, the son of Shivananda Sen, has elaborately described the meeting between Sri Rupa Goswami and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And now this is a verse here from Kavi Karnapur. Kalena Vrindavan Kelivarta Lupteti tam kyapayitam vishishya Kripam tena vishishecha devas tachaiva rupam cha sanatanam cha. In the course of time, the transcendental news of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan was almost lost. To enunciate explicitly those transcendental pastimes, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu empowered Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami with the nectar of his mercy to carry out this work in Vrindavan. So, this was one of there were like two main duties that Mahaprabhu empowered Rupa and Sanatan to carry out. And one was to put Mahaprabhu's teachings in writing, as they did very extensively. And then another was to revive Vrindavan and to reveal the holy places. Because they were, this is like 5,000 years after Krishna's departure from the world. And so many significant sites, they were lost to people's vision. And so that was one of their main tasks, to reveal, to identify and to reveal and manifest in a dignified way all these different sites in Vrindavan. Now we have another verse, also from Kavi Karnapur, Chaitanya Chandradoy. Ya prageva priya guna ganer gada bado pimukto gehad yasada saiva paro murta evapya murta prema laper jidatada padishvanga rangai prayage tam shri rupam samam anupamenanu jagraha devaha. From the very beginning, Srila Rupa Goswami was deeply attracted by the transcendental qualities of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Thus he was permanently relieved from family life. Srila Rupa Goswami and his younger brother Vallabha were blessed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Although the Lord was transcendentally situated in his transcendental eternal form, at Prayag he told Rupa Goswami about transcendental ecstatic love of Krishna. The Lord then embraced him very fondly and bestowed all his mercy upon him. Priya Sarupe, Dayita Sarupe, Prema Sarupe, Sahaja Birupe, Nijanurupe, Prabhu Ekarupe, Tatanarupe, Swavilasarupe. Indeed, Srila Rupa Goswami, whose dear friend was Swarup Damodar, was the exact replica of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he was very, very dear to the Lord. Being the embodiment of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's ecstatic love, Rupa Goswami was naturally very beautiful. He very carefully followed the principles enunciated by the Lord, and he was a competent person to explain properly the pastimes of Lord Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu expanded his mercy to Srila Rupa Goswami, just so he could render service by writing transcendental literatures. Himatta Karnapur like stane stane Prabhu Kripa Koila Ch.Ch Rupa Sanatane. The characteristics of Srila Rupa Goswami have thus been described in various places by the poet Kavi Karnapur. An account has also been given of how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bestowed his causeless mercy upon Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Sanatana Goswami. Mahaprabhu Jatta Boro Boro Bhakta Matra Rupa Sanatan Sabar Kripa Gora Patra. Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami were the objects of love and honor for all the great stalwart devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Keo jadi deshe jai deki Vrindavan, tade prashna kodem prabhur parishadagam. If someone returned to his country after seeing Vrindavan, the associates of the Lord would ask him questions. Kahataha Kahataha kaiche rohe rupa sanatan, koiche rohe koiche vairagya koiche bhojam. They would ask those returning from Vrindavan, how are Rupa and Sanatan doing in Vrindavan? What are their activities in the renounced order? How do they manage to eat? These were the questions asked. Koiche asta prahar koden Shri Krishna bhajan tobe prashamsiya kohe se bhaktagam. The Lord's associates would also ask, how is it that Rupa and Sanatan are engaging in devotional service 24 hours daily? At that time, the person who had returned from Vrindavan would praise Srila Rupa and Sanatan Goswamis. Aniketa duhevane jata vrika gan eka eka vikirtole eka kachi shayam. The brothers actually have no fixed residence. They reside beneath trees, one night under one tree and the next night under another. Vipragrihe stulbika kahamadu kodi shushkaruti chanachivai bhoga padihadi. Srila Rupa and Sanatan Goswami beg a little food from the houses of Brahmins. Giving up all kinds of material enjoyment, they take only some dry bread and fried chickpeas. Karonya matrahate kanta chinda bahirvas Krishna kata Krishna nam nartanulas. They carry only water pots and they wear torn quilts. They always chant the holy names of Krishna and discuss his pastimes. In great jubilation, they also dance. Astapahar Krishna bhajan charidanda shayane Nam Sankirtane Seho Nahe Kondine. They engage almost 24 hours daily in rendering service to the Lord. They usually sleep only an hour and a half. And some days, when they continuously chant the Lord's holy name, they do not sleep at all. Kabu Bhakti Rasa Shastra Koroyelikan Chaitanya Kata Shune Kore Chaitanya Chintan. Sometimes they write transcendental literatures about devotion, and sometimes they hear about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and spend their time thinking about the Lord. Ekata Shuni Mahanter Mahasuka Hoye Chaitanya Kripa Jahe Tahe Ki Vishmoy. When the personal associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would hear of the activities of Rupa and Sanatan Goswamis, they would say, what is wonderful for a person who has been granted the Lord's mercy? So for someone who's received mercy, no, it is not surprising. Such wonderful things, such impossible, extraordinary things are possible with the mercy of the Lord.
You think about them sleeping under a tree every night. So how will they write the books? Where are they? The different things they will require. Isn't that the thing?
Oh, they must have had some little packet.
Traveling package.
Yeah. Some scrolls and some type of pen. I don't know what type of pen they would use. I don't think they had paper, did they?
Yeah.
They did. It is mentioned that they would, but I think paper would have not been very easy to come by. Yeah,
it was fairly common at that time.
Yeah.
It was fairly uncommon about 4,000 years ago, but 500 years ago it was fairly common. Good paper would have been pretty expensive, but
I mean, Srila Swami Maharaj, he had trouble coming up with money to buy paper, and this is in the 1900s. Yeah, it's mentioned that they would write on palm leaves.
Right, palm leaves.
Yeah.
So they were traveling together at that time when
They.
Rupa and Sanatan.
This is we've been going through this the last few days. You haven't been here.
No, but you were saying that they were traveling together.
No, this is Sanatan Goswami's in jail right now. They've just left their government service. Rupa Goswami's been able to meet Mahaprabhu in Prayag, but Sanatan's in jail trying to find his way to meet with Mahaprabhu. But these verses, these are like introductory verses.
Okay.
This is like kind of giving some overview of what it was like when they were living in Vrindavan. They haven't actually gone to Vrindavan yet, but this is like a description what they did and what their life in Vrindavan was. But in this current time period in Chaitanya Charitamrita, they're not in Vrindavan. It's just, yeah. But no, they're not. So they're not traveling together. They go separately to Vrindavan. They meet in Vrindavan. Yeah. And also Anupam, Rupa Goswami is with their younger brother, Anupam Shrivalabha. They're traveling together, the two of them. Srila Rupa Goswami has personally spoken about the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his auspicious introduction to his book, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. As follows, Hridiyasya Preranaya Pravartito Hamvarakarupopi Tasya Hare Parakamalam Vande Chaitanya Devasya. Although I am the lowest of men and have no knowledge, the inspiration to write transcendental literatures about devotional service has been mercifully bestowed upon me. Therefore, I am offering my obeisances at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has given me the chance to write these books. Emata Doshtin Prayagero Hiya Shirupe Shikadilo Shakti Sanchadiya. For 10 days, Mahaprabhu stayed at Prayag and instructed Rupa Goswami, empowering him with the necessary potency. Prabhu kohe shuno rupa bhakti raselakan sutra rupe kohi vista najai varnan. Mahaprabhu said, "My dear Rupa, please listen to me. It is not possible to describe devotional service completely. Therefore, I am just trying to give you a synopsis of the symptoms of devotional service." Parapar shunya gabir bhakti rasa sindhu tomai chakaite tar kohi eka bindu. The ocean of the transcendental mellows of devotional service is so big that no one can estimate its length and breadth. However, just to help you taste it, I am describing but one drop. So he's given us, Rupa Goswami has given that book, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Sindhu is ocean. So the ecstatic nectar of the ocean of devotion, something like that. Bhakti Rasa Sindhu, is Mahaprabhu is saying here. Bhakti Rasa Sindhu. So the name is here. The ocean of the transcendental mellows of devotional service. Etover manda bodhi ananta jiva gan chorashilaka junite koroye brahman. In this universe there are limitless living entities and 8,400,000 species, and all are wandering within this universe. Keshagra shatik bhag puna shatam shakodi tarsam sukshma jiva sadup vichadi. The length and breadth of the living entity is described as 1/10,000th part of the tip of a hair. This is the original subtle nature of the living entity. And then we have quotation to support this from, is this Vishnu Purana? This is from a commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. Keshagra shata bhagasya shatamsha sadrishatmaka jiva shukshma sarupo yam sankyatito hi chidkana. If we divide the tip of a hair into 100 parts, and then take one of these parts and divide it again into 100 parts, that very fine division is the size of but one of the numberless living entities. They are all chitkan, particles of spirit, not matter. It's incredible how powerful the ahankar is. The ahankar makes us feel very big. It really literally makes us feel we're in the center of the universe, we're the center of the world, we're just the center. We're number one.
I think that the size description is partially a joke, because it's saying like 10,000 divisions of essentially nothing. It's saying the tip of, I've seen translated as the tip of the point of a hair, and the hair is tapered, so if you go to the very end of it, you just get nothing.
Yeah, I actually heard somebody say that as well.
The point is practically nothing.
Yeah.
And he's getting at, in fact, like, it's getting at something as well about us, like, needing to, like, see things.
Quantify. Yeah.
That hair is gigantic in magnitude compared to the soul.
Compared to what?
Compared to the size of the soul.
And now we have another quotation telling this also. Balagra shata bhagasya shatada kalpitasya cha bhago jiva tavigyeya iti chaha parashuti. If we divide the tip of a hair into 100 parts, and then take one part and divide this into another 100 parts, that 10,000th part is the dimension of the living entity. This is the verdict of the chief Vedic mantras. And these quotes are from Sriyukta Shavatar Upanishad. Shukshmanam apyaham jiva. Lord Krishna says, among minute particles, I am the living entity. A quotation from Bhagavatam. Apadimita druvas tanubrito yadi sarvagatas tarhina shasyate ti niyamo dhruva netarata ajani chayanmayam tad avimucha niyancha bhavet samam anujanatam yaramatam mata dushtataya. O Lord, this is spoken by the personified Vedas. O Lord, although the living entities who have accepted material bodies are spiritual and unlimited in number, if they were all pervading, there would be no question of their being under your control. If they are accepted, however, as particles of the eternally existing spiritual entity, as part of you, who are the Supreme Spirit whole, we must conclude that they are always under your control. If the living entities are simply satisfied with being identical with you as spiritual particles, then they will be happy being controllers of so many things. The conclusion is that the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are one and the same is a faulty conclusion. It is not a fact. Tarmajestavar jangam duibhed jangametir yakchos talachar vibhed. The unlimited living entities can be divided into two divisions, those that can move and those that cannot move. Among living entities that can move, there are birds, aquatics, and animals. Tar madhya manushya jati ati alpatar, tar madhya mlecha pulinda bodha shabar. Although the living entities known as human beings are very small in quantity, that division may be still further subdivided, for there are many uncultured human beings, like mlechas, pulindas, bodhas, and shabaras. Veda nishta madhyadek, Veda mukha mane, Veda nishida papkode, dharmanahi gane. Among human beings, those who are followers of the Vedic principles are considered civilized. Among these, almost half of them simply give lip service while committing all kinds of sinful activities against these principles. Such people do not care for the regulative principles. Reading this, it reminds us how fortunate we are. Dharma, we're in the, like I was listening to this talk of Gurudev yesterday, and he was like, how many people are practicing Krishna consciousness in the world? Like 0.005%, like 0.0005%. Like Mahaprabhu's starting like he's going from broader to finer, right? Like how many species of life, among those, how many of them have a more developed degree of consciousness that can actually move? Then among those, how many of them are human beings? Among the human beings, how many of them have some understanding of higher principles? Among those who have understanding of higher principles, how many are sincerely following? Like it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Among the followers of Vedic knowledge, most are following the process of fruitive activity and distinguishing between good and bad work. Out of many such sincere fruitive workers, there may be one who is actually wise. Koti Gyani Madhya Hoy. This verse is very well known. Gurudev would quote this verse. Koti Gyani Madhya Hoy ek jana mukta, Koti mukta madhya dolabha ek Krishna bhakta. Out of so many jnanis, there may be one mukta. Out of so many muktas, it will be rare to find one Krishna bhakta. Out of many millions of such wise men, one may actually become liberated, mukta. And out of many millions of such liberated persons, a pure devotee of Lord Krishna is very difficult to find. Krishna Bhakta Nishkam Ataiva Shanta Bhukti Mukti Siddhikami Sakaliya Shanta. It's very, very, I like this a lot. This, how Mahaprabhu begins. It really gives some perspective, in our dealings with the world, and it's a very rare thing. It's a very rare thing. Krishna Bhakta Nishkam Ataiva Shanta Bhukti Mukti Siddhikami Sakaliya Shanta. Because a devotee of Lord Krishna is desireless, he is peaceful. Fruitive workers desire material enjoyment, jnanis desire liberation, and yogis desire material opulence. Therefore, they are all lusty and cannot be peaceful. Muktanam, this is another famous verse from Bhagavatam. Muktanam api siddhanam narayana parayana sudurlabha prashantatma koti shvapi mahamune. O great sage, out of many millions of materially liberated people who are free from ignorance, and out of many millions of siddhas who have nearly attained perfection, there is hardly one pure devotee of Narayan. Only such a devotee is actually completely satisfied and peaceful. Now this verse everybody knows, or they should know. Brahmanda Brahmite kon Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prashade Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. You recognize that verse? Very, very nice verse. According to their karma, all living entities are wandering throughout the entire universe. Some are being elevated to the upper planetary systems, and some are going down into the lower planetary systems. Out of many millions of wandering living entities, this is an expanded translation, out of many millions of wandering living entities, one who is very fortunate gets an opportunity to associate with a bona fide spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. By the mercy of both Krishna and the spiritual master, such a person receives the seed of the creeper of devotional service. This verse, Srila Gurudev and Srila Sridhar Maharaj, they both appreciated very much how Achyutananda, you've heard of Achyutananda, right? One of Srila Swami Maharaj's disciples who spent time at the Math. And one time he visited Hapanya, and one of the local persons there asked him, how is it that we live here and we don't have very much interest in all of this? And you're coming from the other side of the world, and you've given your life to this. How is it possible? Like such appreciation has arisen in your heart when it's right on our doorstep, and we don't have that. And Achyutananda replied with this verse. This was his response. And Gurudev really appreciated that. It requires some, bhagyavan. Bhagya means good fortune, grace, sukriti. It's not a matter of geography. It's a matter of receiving divine grace. Srila Sridhar Maharshi's pointed out that plants, trees, they may be in a better position due to their acquirement of sukriti. If they've been used in the service of the Lord, they may be in a better position at the present time than someone who's achieved a human birth but doesn't have that sukriti. So it's ultimately a matter of divine grace. It's not about your physical, opportunity. So that one who's on the other side of the world, very far removed from these things, they may receive that grace. And one who's in such close proximity, they may not have that. Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagyavanji Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Beach. Now these verses are really, really nice. So this analogy is given of the Bhakti Lata Bij, a seed of the creeper of devotion. It means faith. It is the seed of faith we're receiving from Guru. And Mahaprabhu continues with that analogy, develops that analogy. Mali hoya kore se bijaropan shavan kirtan jole koroye se chan. When a person receives the seed of devotional service, he should take care of it by becoming a gardener and sowing the seed in his heart. If he waters the seed gradually by the process of shavan and kirtan, hearing and chanting, the seed will begin to sprout. So, having received that seed, one should become a gardener. They should sow that seed in their heart. And Shravan Kirtan Jale means the waters of Shravan and Kirtan. They should water that seed with the waters of Shravan and Kirtan, hearing and chanting. Upajya Barelata Brahmanda Bedi Jai Viraja Brahma Lok Bedi Padarvo Ompai. As one waters the Bhakti Lata Bij, the seed sprouts, and the creeper gradually grows to the point where it penetrates the walls of this universe and goes beyond the Viraja river, lying between the spiritual world and the material world. It attains Brahma Lok, the Brahman effulgence, and penetrating that stratum, it reaches the spiritual sky and the spiritual planet, Goloka Vrindavan. So, we have to remember this is not talking about a geographical, movement. This is speaking in terms of consciousness. All of these planes, they represent a particular consciousness. Every zone within the Brahmandas referring to these 14 planetary systems. So each of those zones represents a particular type of consciousness. So one may be situated in this world, but their consciousness is evolving through these different levels of consciousness. So we are in our current stage. We are very mixed, and our another very nice way Gurudev used to explain it, was in terms of gravitational fields. That every zone, every plane has a particular gravitational field, and how we want to cross through he would say the specific gravity of this world. So, and by gravity, we're referring to like a particular type of consciousness, So this is known as Bor Lok, right? And Bor Lok is a plane of gross experience. So, we are attracted to that. Whereas in higher planets, there's more subtle more and more subtler and subtler types of attractions. So our consciousness, as our faith, this seed represents our faith, and as the seed sprouts, it will grow, and the faith will develop to the point where it's able to move past all these different force fields, different gravitational fields, planes of consciousness, and go beyond all these different attractions. And finally, Paravam Pai, reach the transcendental sky. So it's a very, very nice analogy. Tobe jai tadupadi goloka vrindavan Krishna charan. We don't have enough. Gurudev also would use the example of a rocket. You need enough launching power, right, to be able to pass through the gravitational field of this plane, right? So in the same way, we need, and Gurudev would also speak about, like a rocket, like our faith is like a rocket, and our launching pad. Well, I think he spoke of launching pad as faith.
The launching pad was the foundation. Like he from memory, he talked about Nityananda being the foundation of our faith, so being the launching pad.
Yeah, faith is the launching pad. That was what he used to say. Faith is our launching pad. And he also said, by Guru Maharaj's grace, I can launch any rocket to Goloka Vrindavan. So if our launching pad is very strong, then our rocket can be taken through all these different layers, all these attractive these forces of attraction each of these planes represent. Tobe jai tadupadi goloka vrindavan Krishna charan kalparike kore arohan. Being situated in one's heart and being watered by Shravan Kirtan, the Bhakti creeper grows more and more. In this way, it attains the shelter of the desire tree of the lotus feet of Krishna, who is eternally situated in the planet known as Goloka Vrindavan, in the topmost region of the spiritual sky. Taha vistarita hoya fole prema fol iha mali Ch.Ch nitya shavanadi jol. The creeper greatly expands in the Goloka Vrindavan planet, and there it produces the fruit of love for Krishna. Although remaining in the material world, the gardener regularly sprinkles the creeper with the water of hearing and chanting. Okay, I think I'll stop there. It's a good place to stop. Then there's some discussion of different obstacles we will face in taking care of our creeper. The weeds and the pests and such that we have to watch out for. It's a very nice analogy. Jai Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Jai Shri Krishna's Kaviraj Kasam. Jai. Do you want to sing, Didi? Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Namaha. Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha. Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudana Giridhari Gopinata Madana Mohana Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Chandra Radha Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Jaya Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunatha Jai Gosai Kodi Charana Bandana Jaha Hoite Vignana Sabishta Purana Jai Gosai Jamuita Dasa Sansabada Pada Denu Muda Panchaglasa Kadira Charana Sebi Bhakta Sanirasa Janame Janame More Abhilasha Jai Gosai Jabe Braje Koilo Basa Shri Radha Krishna Nitya Leela Kodila Prakasha Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vindavana Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Vajraya Mana Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Kodiyasa Hari Nam Sankirtan Kohe Narottama Dasa Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare